and welcome to Evo India, and this big smile you see on my face is because I'm somewhere extremely special. If you can't tell already, I'm at Jerez to ride this spanking new bike, the Triumph Street Triple RS. Now this is the 2023 generation of the bike, and we're going to be splitting this ride in two parts. Today at Jerez, we're going to be riding the RS variant, and on the next day on the road, we're also going to be getting a chance to experience the R model. Now there's no S model in the lineup anymore, so it's restricted to just these two models. There's a lot to talk about in this bike, so let's just get started. Starting with the design, there are a bunch of new elements on this new Street Triple. The headlight design remains largely similar, but you have these new elements over here. The shorter fly screen, it looks a lot more like the bigger Speed Triple now. This RS variant, it has a higher tail, and this cowl comes as standard. You can either kit it with this or with the standard seat accessory. You can choose either the one that you want. Another major change on the design front is the new design for the tank. It's sharper and more chiseled, allowing the rider to grip the tank better, but on the downside, it has lost 2.4 liters of capacity, meaning it can now hold only 15 liters of fuel. This panel is new, again standard for the RS, but honestly I don't really want to be boring you with the details of the design. It's a spanking looking motorcycle, you have a new tank, a bunch of different elements, but what I'm interested in telling you about is how it rides on track. Bike is an all-new generation, and there are a lot of changes that come with it even on the mechanical front. This RS, it has a sharper rake, so the steering geometry is, as Triumph claims, it's a much more agile bike, and this really does hold true. You get out, you just exit pit lane, and you're just entering the first corner, you immediately feel that this is a much more responsive bike, and that's really saying something considering that the previous generation was quite responsive and sharp as well. So this has really kicked things up a notch. In terms of braking, you get the Brembo calipers up front. This is the highest level of road brakes that you can get. As you can expect, you shed speed as fast as you gain speed. In terms of tires, you get Pirelli's Diablo Supercorsa V3s, immensely grippy. Sadly, when we were here, we experienced a little rain last night, so the track was a little wet. I went out a little scared, but these tires really just helped me focus and ride, gripping in all the places you wanted to grip and gripping much more than you would expect it in any other situation. Apart from that, let's come to the engine. Now the engine also has a lot of changes. The displacement is the same, but there are a lot of internals that have been tweaked, all with the learnings from Triumph's Moto2 outings. They're very successful Moto2 outings, I must say. So lighter, stronger elements, and the compression ratio has also gone up. A result of this is a bump in power. Now these changes hold true for the R also, but I will talk about the R once we ride it tomorrow on the road. Now the gearing has also changed. So the previous bike, it was a little tall in terms of its gearing, and you didn't have as much mid-range as you would like, but this sort of addresses all those concerns. You have a tall first gear and relatively shorter 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and on a track like Jerez, the flowing track, you really appreciate the surge in the mid-range. So that is something that really blew my mind. Now this entire review that you're going to be seeing is not extremely detailed because we would like to ride it back at home in our conditions to give you the final verdict, but as it stands, this has really impressed me, and I think it has the makings to be the best middleweight naked bike. I've had some time on both bikes, on the road and on track, composed myself a bit, sat with my thoughts. Here's what I think. Now this is a pretty significant update to the 765 Street Triple. Visually also there are a few, they might not seem significant, but what's under the skin has really changed the way these bikes handle and perform. Now just quickly I'll get the visual changes out of the way. RS, more aggressive, higher rear end, engine cowl is standard, full TFT display, bar and mirrors, nice red color scheme. You have two others, yellow and grey. Apart from that, there's a lot of component changes, but before I get to that, let's talk about what's different on the standard R. You get an instrument cluster which is quite similar to that on the Trident, but it's in a different housing. You don't get the engine color standard, although you can option it as an aftermarket accessory. The rear is not as high, the rake is not as sharp as the RS, and the color schemes are different. Apart from that, the exhaust tip on the standard R continuing as the same as the end pipe, whereas the RS, the tip is blacked out. Unfortunately, these bikes won't come with Triumph aftermarket exhaust, so if you do want that, you'll have to look elsewhere. That's because in the changes that they've made to the engine, they have gotten rid of the 2 catalytic converter system, and it's just 1 cat directly from the pipes heading out to the end pipe. Now, onto the changes under the skin. Now, the engines, like I said earlier, they're essentially the same capacity, but there's a lot going on inside that has made it that much more different. The whole point was to make it more easy to ride both on the track and on the street. And to that end, you have lighter and stronger components inside and revised gear ratios. So you have a taller first gear and a shorter second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth. Now what this essentially does is it allows you to get good drive on 1 and on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and going on. It's extremely tractable. We rode at Jerez. It was my first time out here. I'm horrible in geography, so it takes time for me to remember things. But this bike really allowed me to take that time, learn the track, and it really fixed all my errors. That is also down to the fact that it's an extremely tractable motor, more so than it was earlier. The torque comes in a little earlier, around 500 RPM earlier. That means that you can almost always carry a gear higher than you should and still not make an absolute fool of yourself. Power has gone up on both. The internals of both are identical. The power difference from the R and the RS is because of the tune. So same engine, different tune, more power, slightly less power, but up quite a bit from the last generation. Around 6% is the number that Triumph claims. Now, in terms of chassis, what's differentiating the R and the RS is primarily brakes, tires and suspension. The geometry is also different. This is running a sharper rake angle than earlier. Now, if you remember my previous video, the RS, the outgoing RS is already an extremely agile bike. This takes this one level further, but we'll get to the RS in a bit. Now the standard R, it comes with Showa Separate Function forks at the front and a Showa monoshock at the rear, both fully adjustable. We rode on the roads in Spain today, and unlike most international rides, the roads weren't perfect. There were quite a few bumps, potholes and changes in surface, and I'm quite thankful for that because it really gave us an idea of what these bikes will be like in our country. Our roads are not great by any means, so we got a fair idea of how they will be. Now the R is slightly on the softer side and you can obviously dial it to your liking, but the monoshock on the rear, it just didn't feel as composed and as sophisticated as the Ohlins on the RS. That being said, it's still a great handler. Everything you know the street triple to be, this is that and then some. In terms of brakes, you're running Brembo monoblock M4.32 calipers on this R and a Brembo single piston sliding caliper at the rear. The brakes are great, you can really modulate them well, sharp enough feedback. And just to quickly jump in here, you think these are good, then you sit on the RS and then you experience the dilemmas, and you just need to really recalibrate how much you need to brake, because one tap and you're shedding so much speed, it's unreal. That's how nice these brakes are, and to have them on a middleweight bike like this, it's extremely heartening to see. Usually you expect this kind of kit to be on the top level bikes, but you get it here and you can't be happier. Apart from that, the steering angle of the R remains the same as the outgoing model, and it's the same sharp, agile, sporty bike that we all know and love. More comprehensive information I can give you once I ride it back at home. So for the time being, this was the R. We rode it on the sunny streets of Spain, and couldn't have asked for a nicer setting to experience this bike. And then now we come to the RS. Now the RS has undergone quite a bit of changes. Like in my honest opinion, in the last generation, there wasn't that much separating the R and the RS, but I think Triumph has really changed that with this generation. Yes, the R is a great bike, but the RS, it's a fantastic motorcycle. The small changes that they have made has really added up quite a bit, and it has taken the previous RS, which in my opinion was amongst the best middleweights out there, and it has made it that much better. You get a more comprehensive electronic suite. The IMU is calibrated better. Cornering ABS, cornering traction control, they're all a bit more polished now. Your bi-directional quick shifter is now standard on both variants. Again, the track and rider customizable mode you can set all the parameters you want. Apart from ABS, you can pretty much turn everything on or off or have them in different levels, and that just allows you to tailor your ride so well. Then you have the chassis setup. Now this is running a sharper rake than the previous RS. That was already agile. This just takes it one level further. You can brake really late courtesy those dilemmas, and then just flick the bike into a corner. It will turn in on a dime. Right, now in terms of suspension setup on the RS, it is also running Showa forks at the front, but it's using higher spec big piston forks, again with full adjustability, and at the rear you get the Ohlins STX40. Now the suspension setup, like I said, on the R is also great. It deals with a lot of undulations really well, but then you step on the RS and you just realize that there's a added layer of sophistication with the way it deals with everything. We only rode the RS on track and we didn't mess with suspension settings, and Jerez, it's beautifully paved. There's no real bad undulations to speak of, and with my weight, with my pace, I didn't really feel like the suspension was slowing me down, but I'm pretty sure once I get faster, dialing the suspension in will help, and the fact that it has full adjustability is really great. So it's pretty future-proof in that sense. In terms of the engine, again, like I said, very tractable, very refined, barely any vibes to speak of unless you're really hitting the limiter hard. And in my opinion, this is all the power you need for a country like India, especially if you're riding primarily on the streets. If you do want to go touring, I would recommend getting a fly screen because the wind blast is immense. We were clocking around 210 on the back straight, and it was hard to hold on, but the fact that the bike was doing that and was doing that so comfortably, and it had a lot more to give, is immense. Another thing separating the RS from the R are its tires. Now earlier the R would also run Pirellis but not the Supercorsas, but now Triumph has decided to give the R Continental's Conti Road tires, which are good, but the RS, it gets Pirelli Supercorsa V3s, and my god, do these tires have grip. Unfortunately, when we reached the track, it was slightly damp because it was raining all night, and we were told to go cautiously, and because I didn't know the track, I was taking it easy and trying to miss all the puddles which were on the racing line. But the more I started riding, the more I got familiar with the bike. These tires and the chassis setup just inspire so much confidence, and they have so much grip on tap that unless it's a proper puddle, you can just go through it, be gentle on the gas and get out of it without any drama. But if you do want drama, this bike is capable of that as well. Get the traction control on the lowest setting or switch it off altogether. You can go sliding into pretty much every corner. Now, in the past, I have had issues with the RS's traction control system, and I found it a little too intrusive. But in this, I don't think that's the case anymore. Certain corners where I messed up and I came in a little too hot, it intervened, it did its job, it didn't make itself aware, and I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay to a traction control system. And Triumph in that regard have nailed it over here. But then again, I was riding at Jerez, which is a MotoGP FIM spec track. How it will fare on our roads is something I'm looking forward to finding out very soon. So yeah, at this point, honestly, I can just keep going on and on about what these bikes are, and there's a lot to cover, but there's not enough time to do that. So I will get you a more comprehensive, more detailed road test once I ride the bikes back in India. But for now, I think I'm going to close this video out by saying that Triumph has taken a very good formula, that is the street triple. It is famous for a reason, and they have taken that and made it that much better with this generational update. Like I said, on the face of it, it doesn't look like a significant update over the outgoing model, but the small changes that they have made really do add up. Now, as of filming this video, we don't know what the prices are yet, but I can expect, considering the prices in the UK and US have received a slight bump, the same is applicable for India. We will find out soon enough, but if they do manage to get it at that range or slightly lower, you have two fantastic products to look at. And honestly, if you do have that extra money for those brakes, for those tires, for that sharper steering and the smaller changes, and especially the suspension at the rear, do go for the RS. You won't go wrong with it, and it's going to be a while before you hit its potential. So that's all from me from here in Spain. Thanks for watching, and let us know in the comment section below what you think about Triumph's new Street Triple 765R and 765 RS.